I do hope. Hello, 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 class, and welcome to week 3. We are in Spain, España. One of uh, my favorites, as even though I say that probably every week, there's always something delicious to be found in pretty much every country. So, without further ado, I just want to say thanks for being here and my apologies for my voice and feedback for this week. I am under the weather with COVID, so please bear with me. But I will do my best to get everything uh, graded to you tomorrow. I'm going to have to go to sleep after this. I'm covering for another chef as well, so things a little bit rough. Thanks, Antonio, and very sorry. Okay, thank you. Um, Class, just to put it out there, all of you, stay safe, stay healthy, stay well. Here as I'm right. Eat your vegetables. We already know we are right. But stay strong. Um, Reach out if things are happening so that we can, help. And provide resources if you have anything that I can help you with. All right. Um, Everybody deals with life, right? So I totally get it. Um, Human just like you, but you guys already know that. So um, let us continue on with Spain. We have a ton to talk about as always, but I will promise to get you out of here on time. And uh, actually, this week, when we look at recipe wise, it's a pretty light one. Um, some maybe a little bit hard sourcing. We want to make sure that you get the right type of rice for making paella, but we'll cover some alternatives. Finding a short grain rice that will do the trick if you can't find paella rice or bomba rice as it's called. Okay, so now, let me pull up the discussion forum. And well, first we'll hop into the slideshow for this week, and then we'll get into the discussion forum. I do want to put something out though regarding the discussion forum because there is a dish called migas de pastor. Now, when what's interesting and I think fascinating, um, when we look at, we've been talking about for weeks the movement of people, spices, ingredients, dishes, techniques, right? Now, what we're going to actually tap into um, between Spain and Mexico next week is very interesting because um, some of the things that I'm going to cover today, you might think, well, wait, that sounds Mexican. Well, hey, guess what? Well, what happened? Spain came in and colonized Mexico, right? So we're going to see some of these similarities. There's also a dish, migas de pastor, which is very common in Mexico, but also actually from Spain. Now, when I first knew about migas de pastor, I thought of the Mexican version with tortilla chips. However, that is not the original. That is an adopted version and adaptation from what came over. So again, we're going to see this. Or perhaps maybe you've heard of the drink horchata, right? When I think about horchata, I immediately go to Mexican cuisine. Um, and I think about this delicious rice milk with cinnamon, a little bit of sweetness. But lo and behold, again, origin Spanish. Huh. Okay. So we think about this, right? We think about how dishes get crossed over or thought or misconfused, right? Confused with another dish. This is constantly happening. So the more we research, the more we dive into food, the more we know, and the more we can do to make these connections and think about the historical component of these, as well as thinking about how ingredients got from point A to point B, right? Remember, one of the biggest, when we think about Mexico, we're going to be getting into that next week, tomatoes, chilies. Let's think about last block, Italy, tomatoes, not from there. but origin in Mexico. So we see how this confusion is very easy and normal to happen, okay? Or even we think about Lebanon, right? Lebanese cuisine, the falafel, the hummus, and people thinking that's Greek, right? Well, maybe because it was served at a Mediterranean restaurant and it's on the menu. Oh, again, deeper dive, more research, deeper understanding of where products originated, how they came to be, and how they are now. Now, continuing on, Spanish cuisine, pretty interesting. When we look at the majority of Spanish cuisine, uh, is 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 very much influenced by massive amounts of history. So let's pull in and take a look at the map, and that's going to start to clue us in and say, huh, the Iberian Peninsula, and how did this influence come about? So let's pull this up, and then we're going to hop right into that slideshow. All righty. Spain. So let's first get in there and take a look where we're located, right? This always puts things kind of into perspective, literally and figuratively, all right? So here we have, oopsies, open in maps. That's what we want. Spain. There it is, right? The rain in Spain falls mainly in the plains, right? Huh, okay. Plains, where are those? All right, so we've got the Mediterranean, right? We know that. Now let's zoom out. Also, let's just look at that. How shocking, right? We've got this massive continent, right? Africa right below. We also have China, Asia moving through the Middle East, right? Boom, right up. We also have Mediterranean, Italy popping in, France, big border with France and Spain, right? Portugal, Morocco. Let's zoom in. Let's get in. Let's see it. Let's see those people, right? Where were people coming? Oh, people were hopping over. This little distance is not big at all. Quite small, actually. All right. A short ferry, and you are right on a completely different continent. All right. So now again, zooming out, we see a huge amount of a frontier, a border shared with Portugal, right? We see a lot of coast. We've got southern area that is full of sunshine. We've got tons of coast. Valencia, which is where paella, the dish we're going to be making, is origins and claim to fames are. And then we go up a little bit farther north. We've got a very different region up here, all along the coast and into the border with France and Spain. Okay. So we are going to see many varied regions of flavors, dishes, ingredients, as well as a ton of different wine growing regions, as well as certain cheeses, jamón ibérico, manchego, right? What grows around here? Saffron, if you remember that ingredient, we talked about some of the best coming from Iran, but a huge amount of saffron actually comes from Spain as well. So let's hop on in and start taking a look and see what we've got. Alrighty, let's take a deeper dive. As you can see, I always love these. We see gazpacho, one of my favorites. We've got that queso manchego, jamón ibérico de bolota, pulpo a la gallega, fabada, and then, of course, we've got some patatas a la rijona, as well as paella valenciana. Okay, paella you will find out. We see this unique shaped pan. Okay, and when you cook this dish, you're probably going to say, "Ooh, chef, I'm not so sure this is going to work out." But fear not. Uh, remember, there are so many different ways of cooking rice. That we should just give it a go and see what happens. All right. This style of pan is not required to actually execute paella. But if you have a paella pan, definitely give it a go for this week, but it's not required. Okay. You do want to make sure that you have a large enough saute pan to execute this dish properly. If it's too small, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get that rice fully cooked. All right, so the larger the better. Now, again, this is the Iberian Peninsula, okay? And this had a ton of wars, fiefdoms, kingdoms, changing of power. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. Alrighty. So when we think about some of these interesting ingredients found in Spain actually came from Mesopotamia and India. Things like bananas, almonds, cinnamon. We know cinnamon came from where? India. Bananas, almonds, huh? Where did they come from? Spain now, interestingly enough, was not unified that long ago. Yes, far longer ago than like we look at the history of the United States, but compared to some others, not quite as long. 1516, okay? Previously, they were separate kingdoms. So where do separate kingdoms? What do we know? Different people, probably different languages, different cuisines, regional differences, right? Cultural differences. You also have a massive influence of Moorish influence, okay? There was a huge war of the Moors versus the Christians. You've got a ton of Arabic influence coming in from North Africa, right? Remember, we've learned about this already. North Africa and going up, okay? So we see a lot of those flavors coming in as well. Now, probably one of the biggest things is going to be the Columbian Exchange, which we've touched on and we will continue to touch on, right? But the Columbian Exchange was the exchange of goods and people between the Old World and the New World during the Age of Exploration, okay? Now, this increased trade, increased food production across the globe, right? We're also thinking about bringing those tomatoes from the New World, Mexico and the Americas, over to the Old World, Italy, Spain. How are we having gazpacho in Spain if we didn't get those tomatoes coming over from Mexico, right? Well, that was part of the Columbian Exchange. Now, remember, that also includes slavery, that includes disease, that also includes, peppers, potatoes. Potatoes come from South America, most likely in the Andes, okay, Peru. Peppers, for whether they're spicy or sweet, again, the Americas, paprika, sugarcane, cacao, cocoa, all of these, maize, corn, right? All were coming introduced. What did they bring? They brought pigs, they brought wheat. Those brought that into the New World, right? Those didn't exist before. But again, we need to be thinking about this. It was not just food, okay? It was disease, it was slavery, it was religion. All right, let's keep going. We can go into deep, horrible places with this, but we need to move forward and say, okay, how did this actually have an impact? What changed? Why did this happen? Right? Continuing on, when we get into as we start to cross into this region, right, where we think about Spain, Old World, New World, all right, uh, uh, foods completely changing and coming into new areas, along with people, along with cultures, along with seeds, along with techniques for food. This is where we really actually start to see a completely new cuisine becoming developed around the world. All right. Now, if we start breaking down regions of Spain, there are a ton actually of plant-based dishes, which I'm really excited about to share with you. All right, from Catalonia, we've got delicious things like aliolio, sofrito. Maybe you come from an area where you also have sofrito. Maybe from Puerto Rico, maybe another area. And you think, I know what sofrito is. Well, guess what? There's going to be Spanish sofrito as well. Boom, cava, just like we talked about in France with champagne or this or prosecco in Italy. Cava is their sparkling wine. Now, horchata, as I mentioned before, it is not made from rice. Originally, it was made from chufa or tiger nuts. Now, Valencia, as we mentioned on the coast, paella, bomba rice. It is short grain. It is a bit firmer than arborio, and it's cultivated and grown in eastern Spain. Now, for this dish, bomba is preferred. However, if you cannot find bomba rice, short grain rice will work. That could be arborio or carnaroli, which are both traditionally used to make risotto, or even a short grain sushi rice can get the trick done. Okay. Now we've got Murcia, which we have a lot of fava beans. We also have pisto luciano, which is a vegetable, purely vegetable dish, vegetarian dish. When we go into Castile, we see the migas de pastor. So pastor, okay, we think about essentially those are shepherds, okay? Shepherds are walking around. Well, guess what? Shepherds are walking around with their animals, shepherding, right? So you're not carrying a bunch of stuff with you. You start off with some fresh bread, and eventually that bread goes stale. Well, guess what? That stale bread, we're not throwing that out. We're transforming that into a new dish. This is the origin of migas de pastor. So the dish of the shepherds. Okay. Now, originally, you would have pork or small game and fat, and then your stale bread, and maybe a few other ingredients like a little garlic or some other seasonings. But of course, we can transform this, and that's what we're going to be doing and talking about for your discussion forum this week. Continuing on, Galicia, a ton of what people call peasant style dishes, right? But also potatoes, seafood. But hey, we look at this, and again, potatoes did not exist here before. So this is a more recent cuisine that we're talking about. This is not ancient cuisine, right? Again, we always want to be challenging and saying, well, where did that technique or when did this ingredient arrive? This can clue us in the history to how the people impacted this. All right. Now, you also have empanadas. Well, what type of nada? Pampanada. Who? What about tortilla español, Spanish tortilla? It is nothing like the tortilla that we think about in Mexico. Flat, thin, and a flatbread made out of either corn, and then later wheat. Remember, wheat was not there. Wheat was brought over by the Spaniards to Mexico. All right. So I know that I'm giving you a little bit of Spanish and Mexican information. That's because right now we're in Spain. Next week we're going to Mexico. So all of this is going to start making even more sense and connections. Now, Extremadura, which is essentially no man's land, long droughts, not a lot's growing there, right? However, some of the things that do grow, thistle greens, asparagus, chickpeas, right? So we're going to see those ingredients showing up. Continuing down, Andalusia, southern Spain, hot, right? Now, this is where I think this is really interesting. Again, the mixed history. Did gazpacho originate from Romans or Arabs, right? And originally, gazpacho was really more bread-based. You're going to see a lot of utilization of bread in Spanish cuisine. Spain has not had the strongest economy for a very long time. Remember, we looked back and said it was constantly warring, right? When there's constant war, guess what? Famine, the lack of access to food, all right? All of these start to shape and form cuisines. But olive oils, right? Lots of olives, all right? As well as sherry, okay? Sherry vinegar, vinagre de Jerez, very specific, very special. Now, when we get into the Canary Islands, I think you'll find this pretty interesting. It's also actually known as the Dog Islands, okay? And one of their great dishes are papas arrugadas, okay? What's interesting about this is that those boiled potatoes, they get wrinkled, right? Because they're actually cooked literally, Canary Islands, full and surrounded by salt water. So you take that salt water and you boil your potatoes. Huh. Canary Islands was actually a very integral part because if we look, I want to show this to you because if we look at the Canary Islands, this is going to be fascinating. At least it is to me. Get back into the share page. The Canary Islands are off the coast of Africa, but part of Spain. So again, here we are, Spain. Here we are, Africa, right? This is where the Canary Islands are, Gran Canary. This is an insane point for massive different groups of people. Okay. It ends up having a very unique, kind of almost not as well exposed history. Okay. I think it's pretty interesting. I still need to do a lot of information and deep research into the Canary Islands. Never been there. I don't know much about it. I actually always thought that the Canary Islands were part of Africa just because of due to their proximity to Africa, right? I mean, we're full on. Yeah, those that's what that looks like. That's part of Africa to me, right? But it's not. All right. Again, huge different cross of people and unique history here. A stopping point as well. Let's continue on into the spreadsheets. Excuse me, the slideshow. All right. Getting back in here. Again, sorry for my sniffles. I know it's annoying. It's annoying for me too. All righty. Let's get back in here. All right. It did become part of Spain in the early 1400s. So now, Balearic Islands, I was actually lucky enough to live and work on the Balearic Islands on farms, harvesting olives, making olive oil, as well as many other things. Best dish ever, plant-based as can be, tumbet, essentially. Now it says a fried vegetable stew. I wouldn't quite classify that as that. What you do essentially is you take potatoes, you take peppers, you take tomatoes, you take eggplant, okay, a little bit of garlic, and you heat up olive oil, okay, and you slice all of your products into about a half an inch thick, all right, round circles, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, and you pan fry. You don't deep fry, you pan fry those vegetables in rounds, okay? And as you're pan frying, you're taking those out and then you're transferring them to a casserole dish. And that's when you can either, oftentimes, a tomato sauce could be used or instead of, just full tomatoes. But all of that gets layered and stacked and then finished in the oven. Sounds very simple, kind of sounds reminiscent of what? Ratatouille, right? But not as mixed and not cooked like a stew. It's actually cooked more like a casserole. One of the best dishes I've ever experienced in my life. And it was just so simple. Now, is it super healthy? No, we're shallow frying. There's definitely a high quantity of olive oil. But if you're looking for a delicious plant-based, awesome casserole-like dish that says, wow, what is going on? That is your spot. Tune bet. Give it a go. All right. Next, we've got the Basque region, which is right in that corner of northeastern Spain and southwest France. Okay, we've got a whole area. They actually, many of these, they've been fighting for their own area, their own territory. They are not French. They're not Spanish. They have their own language. Okay, but they're still fighting for their freedom, right? Then their independence hasn't happened. Maybe it never will, right? Don't know, but they very much identify as their own. Bacalao, salt cod, which is prominent, right? Along many areas that were coastal and had a big fishing fleet. Why? Guess what? You catch fish. What do we have? We've got salt water. We've got a lot of salt. You pack that down, now you've got a preserved product that then gets converted into a lot of dishes and not doesn't just stay in Portugal and Spain, but actually shows itself in Mexican cuisine as well. All right, especially during Christmas, interestingly enough. Now, when we look at certain areas, certain products that are intrinsic to Spain and Spanish cuisine, however, they're not all from there, as we know, right? But we've got saffron, we've got anchovies, garlic, onions, jamon, the jamon ibérico, peppers, olive oil, herbs. Now, I find this very interesting when we look at the herb utilization from country to country. Spain is, I won't say simple, but I think on some levels it is, right? We have bay leaves, rosemary, oregano, peppercorns, which should not be an herb, and fresh parsley. Basil, no. Thyme, no. Cilantro, no. Very, very, very kind of minimalistic. Bay leaves, rosemary, oregano, and parsley. It's kind of four. That's what we're focusing on. Of course, olives, sherry vinegar, Spanish chorizo. Spanish chorizo is very different from Mexican chorizo. But again, here we get this crazy combination, right? And confusion. Spanish chorizo is dried, cured, and it's hard like a salami. Mexican chorizo is high in cumin and it is soft and it is a fresh sausage, while the Spanish one is cured. All right. Now, of course, we've got tomatoes, which we know did not come from Spain, but used prolifically. We've got your piquillo peppers. We've got a lot of paprika. We have padron peppers. Padron peppers, pretty cool. They joke about it being like Russian roulette. You never know when you get a spicy one. Most of them are not. Of course, we've got saffron, the stigma getting hand plucked from the crocus plant. And then, of course, your boquerones, your anchovies, white anchovies specifically, olives, your jamón ibérico, and then, of course, your queso manchego as well. Now, tapas. Tapas have a very unique story, okay? When we think about tapas, tapa in Spanish means top, literally like a lid. So figure this, you're at a bar, okay? Tapas could also be known as pinchos or pincho, depending upon where it is, all right? Now, tapas are often served with drinks. Okay. Now, initially, and then one of the story goes, you've got a glass and you put a top on it, right? A piece of bread with maybe a little bit of, maybe a little small something. And two things. One could be served with the drink, right? To make sure that people didn't drink too much. Another one was to make them little salty bites. Guess what? If we give them little salty bites, they get thirsty, right? Then they keep wanting to drink more. So it's cyclical. All right, now we start to see these theories coming in. But tapas at the end of the day have really been formed a huge part of Spanish culture. And it's very common to go out casually with friends for, not a big drink fest, but a small glass of wine and a few small bites to eat, or a small glass of beer, and again, a few small bites to eat. Tapas are really are very distinct regionally as well, and there are tons of ways to make what some of them are non-plant based but plant based. Okay. So let's hop into some of these other plant-based dishes. We talked about pesto. We've got eggplant romesco sauce. This is one of my favorites, very classic dish, sauteed spinach with raisins. You can hit that with a little bit of shallot, perhaps some pine nuts as well. Really roll this out. Now, we see this champiñones al ajillo, right? Garlic mushrooms sauteed with an abundance of garlic, olive oil, and parsley. And that's really it. Quite simple and insanely flavorful. All right. You've got a wonderful, again, I told you and mentioned the utilization of bread, stale bread, from migas de pastor to gazpacho, right? In gazpacho, the original one definitely contained bread, and this was part of the thickening ingredient. Imagine this. You're hot. It's summer. Oh, we've got some leftover stale bread. We've got some tomatoes. We've got some garlic and maybe some other ingredients, mortar and pestle. Bring that together and voila. Ooh, boom, another bread dish. This is a soup made from tomatoes, bread, and again, olive oil and garlic. You also have another soup, yet again, made from bread. Bread is, you think about uh, crunchy, stale bread. You put that in your hot bowl of soup of vegetables, right? And now you've got a thickener. You've just bulked up your meal and really added some calories and some texture to this. So ajo blanco is again made of crushed almonds, garlic, water, olive oil, and bread. We're looking at about 5 ingredients. And again, think about this. We're talking about a country that has constantly been in war and has long been striving for a stronger economy. Okay. So there's a lot of utilization of leftover bread. Okay. We find this all around the world, right? Think about if you look into some Asian countries, the dish kanji. Just want you to start making connections, right? Kanji. So kanji is a very low, slow cooked soup made of rice. But you cook that rice so long, and it's often from the day before rice. So maybe you had a dish with rice, now you have leftover rice, and next day you're converting that into a soup. Add more water, bulk it up, right? It's also a bulking technique, especially when you don't have the food to go longer. Guess what? You make it go longer. All right. Now, let's take a look at meal times. Now, this is obviously not everybody is eating all of these meals all the time, but breakfast has been generally very small. Café con leche, maybe Valencia, where oranges are grown, maybe a little orange juice, maybe totally skipped. However, you will see you get a little mid-morning snack coming in. And that could be as simple as a little bocadillo, right? Just a little piece of bread with a slice of tortilla de papas or maybe a thin slice of manchego. It could be just as simple as bread pan tomate, one of the best things ever. A crunchy piece of bread, garlic rubbed down, olive oil, and you take a half of tomato, you cut it, or you take a tomato, you cut it in half, and you spread that tomato there. And that bread soaks up that tomato juice. Pan tomate. Simple, beautiful, and then, of course, douse it in some extra olive oil, salt, and pepper. When you don't have much, you've got a lot. Okay. Next, we go into comida, the main lunch, a little bit later from about 2 to 4. Big, strong, and oftentimes you'll have like a menu of the day, which usually and oftentimes consists of a soup or an appetizer, your main course, and a dessert, and usually a little glass of wine or a glass of beer, or perhaps a glass of a juice or another drink. And then, of course, classic siesta. Next, later, you hop into the merienda, right? Afternoon snack to tide a person over to dinner. All right. A little sweet, a little pastry, or maybe we get into tapas. Well, tapas or dinner could be both, right? Tapas could be those late bites with drinks, or again, smaller plates that are shared with one another and multiple guests. Okay. And it's really a time of thinking about eating together, joining together, and sharing, but not, overindulging in that sense. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and read these. These are in Spanish, which I love. But we also have the English version, which I will read to you. All right. As we know, slurping, burping, those are out. Some countries, that's totally fine. Elbows on the table, nope, take them off. Don't insult Spanish cuisine. And of course, you should wait until everyone is seated and has food on their plates to begin. Now, hands keep them visible, right? As well as tipping is optional. Finding out and tipping culture is very unique, especially when we look at the United States, where tipping culture is huge, right? And you can come over to other countries where tipping can actually be seen as an insult because they say, I'm getting a fair wage. I don't need your money, right? They're proud of their job. They don't need coins being given to them, right? It's a very different culture, right? We want to be thinking about that constantly. It is fascinating, constantly learning and trying to figure out, what to do. So if you ever find yourself going to travel somewhere, always do that research beforehand to say, first of all, what and where should I eat? And then, do I tip? Do I not? Okay. Should I drink? Should I not? When? How? Why? All right. And of course, you should always offer to help offer the host. Now, we're going to get into our delicious dishes this week, which are patatas bravas. We're making 2 sauces, one of which is creamy kind of plain aioli, and the other one is the patatas bravas. And patatas bravas really means kind of like fiery and strong, and that's because it's going to have some heat behind it. But it's actually not that spicy, so don't worry. And then as well as we're making a vegetarian, vegan paella. All right. Paella from Valencia and from other regions is often made with anything from game like rabbit or small poultry, birds, to what was recently caught. That could be mussels, it could be different pieces of fish, it could be the combination of the two. But the other thing is that the paella is really often cooked over traditionally a wood fire. So you've got what you have and you bring it together, and it's meant to cook fairly quickly and on top of a wood fire. All right. Now, let's hop on into our recipe so we can cover over these, and then I will get you guys on your merry way. Let's hop on in. We're going to talk about sokarat as well, which is very interesting when we look at the paella world. And then during study hall, I don't know if if any of you have ever heard, but Spain is kind of like the place where molecular gastronomy, if you're familiar with this and heard these terms, kind of really was born and changed dining exponentially in the 80s and 90s. Molecular gastronomy, a completely different approach, which I think is fascinating when we look at this cuisine, that we see utilization of a lot of bread, a poor, a poor food, as sometimes it's called, right? Like when we think about Italy, cucina povera, all right? And we've got these kind of not a ton of ingredients, simple, delicious foods, but really taking to give him what the earth gives him from that region. Okay, very local cuisine. And then you fast forward to this complete other side, molecular gastronomy, 500, $1,000, check averages. Who is affording this? How did this happen to go from a cuisine that's has so many, dishes based on bread and utilizing what the land gives us to this insane high-end crazy molecular gastronomy and completely having revolutionizing the culinary world. It is fascinating, right? So remember, cuisines and cultures are constantly challenging our thoughts and what is of the country itself. Okay, let's hop on in. And take a look at our recipes for this week. Patatas bravas are a very classic dish, by the way. You go out at night, and what are people eating? Everybody's sitting around with a little fork, sharing a plate of patatas bravas. They've got a little beer, maybe they've got cider, maybe they've got a glass of wine, but something, there's always some nibbling going on. You're not out there drinking, just drinking. You're drinking and eating, whether it's tapas or pinchos or patatas bravas. Now, what I love about patatas bravas is the fact that, well, not say the best way to make one of the crispiest, crunchiest fried potatoes you'll ever have is what we're going to be learning about right now. So let's hop on in and take a look, because what you're going to be doing is blanching, not in water, but oil blanching or par cooking your potatoes. You're going to develop no color on your par cook, on your blanch. And then once all of those are done, you're going to go in for your second fry. And that's where we're going to crisp these up. So let's hop on in and take a look at the method. Also, we're going to go into one of my favorite creamy sauces. I love creamy sauce, and I love it even more when I can have a great substitution for something that would typically be made with mayonnaise, right? But you still get all that creaminess, and that's what we're going to be executing this week. So let's take a look and pop on in. These are our patatas bravas. We're making our sauces, and we are going to do our vegetable paella second. All right. Starting off, again, it always looks a little bit more intense because we've got 3 recipes kind of crammed into one page, but trust me, it is fairly straightforward and easy. The first one up, silken tofu. You do need silken tofu. Regular firm tofu, you're not going to get the right texture for this. And I hope that this gives you inspiration for making a ton of silky, creamy, delicious dressings, for whether it's serving it up with your French fries or patatas bravas, or putting it for a mayo, as a mayo replacement, or a salad dressing. But silken tofu, lemon juice, minced garlic, extra virgin olive oil, and salt. That is literally it. And you are essentially making an aioli. All right. Remember, an aioli would traditionally be made with oil and egg yolks, okay, and garlic. Or much like toom, just garlic and oil. All right, but egg yolks definitely with the aioli factor. So you take your tofu, your lemon juice, your garlic, a pinch of salt into a blender food processor, blend until smooth. With that blender or food processing running, stream in your oil, get that nice emulsification, right? Do not over blend this. Otherwise, your tofu and your oil will separate and you'll see that broken. So don't just be conscious. Don't get it too hot. Don't overrun the blender. Remember, this is silken tofu. It's going to blend up pretty quick and nice and easily. All right. Once that's fully incorporated, adjust your seasonings. Reserve easily to put it in a squeeze bottle for application, or just reserve it on the side, store away. Next up, we go into your Brava sauce. Okay. So what do we need for that? We need olive oil, small diced onion, minced garlic, tomato paste. That's where we're going to get our color and deeper flavor. A little bit of flour. All right. This is going to thicken up our sauce. And then hot paprika and smoked paprika. You could also use, if you didn't have hot or smoked, or you had a heat sensitivity, you could use sweet paprika here. Okay. So simple and straightforward. You're going to heat up that olive oil, medium heat, add in your onions, sweat those until they're soft and translucent. We don't want to develop color, okay? Once they're soft and translucent, add that garlic and just gently cook until it's aromatic, all right? Just get that flavor coming in. Next, we're going to hit it with that tomato paste. We know when we add tomato paste, we want to cook out that raw flavor. We want to get a little sweetness out of there, right? Otherwise, it's a little sharp and acrid, okay? And you want to deepen that color of that tomato paste. Once that's coming in, you do your technique of sanger, okay? Sanger, which means you're adding flour in, essentially creating a roux in the pan, all right? You add your flour, add your paprikas, and gently cook that until, again, we lose the raw flour flavor, just until it gets a slightly aromatic and nutty. Next, you're going to whisk in your veggie stock. Remember, you do need to make sure that you're whisking continuously so you don't get any large lumps. And at this point, you want to just bring that to a boil, immediately reduce to simmer, and cook until it thickens, but you don't want to over reduce that. Now, if you want a smooth sauce, as opposed to having chunks of of onion in there, you could blend that at this point as well. But you already have a really smooth, silky sauce with the aioli, so it's not necessary. I'm just wanting you to think about different applications and consistencies in sauce, right? Kind of looks like ketchup, but it's not, right? On that plate, right? Looks like fries served up with ketchup, but it is not. It is salsa brava, and it is a delicious alternative for ketchup as well. It, has those same components, except it has that thickening component from the flour itself. Now, next up, we're going into our fried potatoes. We're going to make sure you get Idaho or russet potatoes. These are what are going to get nice and crunchy on the outside and fluffy on the inside, right? These are starchy potatoes, not waxy potatoes. Waxy potatoes like golden, Yukon Gold, Red Bliss, these are not going to develop the correct texture. You need to use Idaho or russet starchy potatoes to get that crispy exterior and fluffy interior. And this is the technique that we're going to do it. You do want to make sure that you have a thermometer, because you are going to start off and you need ample amount of oil. Remember, deep frying technique, not shallow frying. All right. You're going to fill up your pot with oil and get that up to about 300. I would say go lower as opposed to higher. 300 is good. 325 is fine, but 300, 315, excellent. Okay. And you're going to start putting in your potatoes. You don't want to overcrowd your pan, because we're going to drop down the oil too much and we're going to get fat logged. Okay. Now, you just want to take away the rawness of these potatoes. You do not want to develop any color at this page. This is essentially oil blanching. All right. When we blanch, we don't put any color on, right? No color. So just to take away the rawness, keep an eye on that. It could be closer to 4 minutes. 7 minutes might, if you walk away, you're going to have some crispy colored potatoes. We want no color. All right. Just take that, remove from the blanching oil, and place those on paper towels or a sheet tray to let that excess oil drop. Next, once all of those have been par blanched, next we go in, we're going to crank up that oil. We're going to get that temperature going up. 375. Okay. 350, 375, higher. 350, 365, 375, you're good. And this is where we're going to go start frying in batches. And we're going to get those beautiful potatoes, crispy, crunchy, golden brown. Ooh, and once we pull those out, we've got the great color, put them on the rack, sprinkle with a little bit of salt, and serve it up with your sauces. Voila, you're going to enjoy that. All right. Very simple, very straightforward. All right. Next up, and last but certainly not least, we have your vegetable paella. So, saffron threads. Saffron threads are very expensive. If you don't already have them and you're on a budget, you can omit those. All right. Yes, it is classic and a component of paella. However, again, we're talking about working on a budget. We're talking about, what is accessible. If you can't uh, uh, track those down or they're out of your budget, just drop it off. It doesn't say optional. I'm telling you, it is optional. You could use a slight pinch of turmeric if you wanted the yellow hue or color, but don't add too much turmeric. Um, you don't want, a turmeric flavored paella. Not that that would be bad. I love turmeric, but you don't need saffron. Okay, it is really not going to contribute a huge amount to the color, so you can just omit that. Next up, you've got artichoke hearts, canned and in their brine. You're going to use the brine as part of the stock to cook your rice. If you can't find artichoke hearts, hearts of palm actually would work here as well. All right. And then you need your vegetable stock, your olive oil, small dice on your onions, and red pepper or yellow or orange. All right, I would steer away from green because we want that sweetness. But if that was what was working in your budget, you can use it. All right, or a combination therefore of, again, small dice. You need 1 cup of tomatoes, small dice, minced garlic, a little bit of paprika, dried thyme. You could use fresh if you had it. Your bomba rice or arborio or carnaroli, or even worst case scenario, sushi rice, okay? Short grain, right? And then of course, asparagus, trimmed and cut into 2-inch pieces. All right, if asparagus is not in season where you are, it's very expensive. You could use another green beans, blanched and shocked could be good here. Asparagus definitely has a beautiful color, but asparagus can be a little bit pricey right now, depending upon where you're living. All right, now you're going to take your frozen green peas and put those in a bowl, let them defrost on the counter while you're cooking up your paella. Salt, black pepper, and a little bit of green onions for your garnish. All right. Now, here's where the fun starts. You are going to first get your sauce pot ready. You're going to take your brine left over from your artichoke hearts, your vegetable stock. If you've got saffron, you're going to put this in. You're going to bring that to a boil, turn off the heat, add your saffron, a little bit of salt. Taste that. Ooh, does it need more salt? Perhaps. Okay. Remember, if you don't have saffron, a small pinch of turmeric can do the trick. All right. Next, you need a large saute pan here. The larger, not the larger the better, so big, but a large one. A small one, you are going to be frustrated because you're going to have to add a lot more stock and you're going to have too thick of that rice. Okay. You're going to have undercooked rice. So a large saute pan is good here. All right. Now, say you don't have a large saute pan. Well, what should I do? Maybe I should half my recipe, right? That's what you want to think, thinking about this, right? Okay, I don't have a large saute pan. Maybe I need to half this so that I can get the right texture and consistency in cook time here and make sure that my rice is fully cooked. So in your large saute pan or paella pan, you're going to take your olive oil over medium heat. All right. Once you've got that going, add your onion and sweat until translucent. Do not develop color and get that nice and soft. Then you're going to hit in your bell peppers, your tomatoes, your garlic, your paprika, your dried thyme, and check your seasoning. Quick little taste. All right, we're good to go. Next, once that tomato starts releasing some of its juice, now we know we're ready for action. You're going to add in your short grain rice and just stir to combine. It's going to take a lot of inner strength to say, ooh, this is different, right? We think about stirring rice, maybe when we're making risotto, we think about adjusting how much water, all of those factors. You just want to stir in that rice just to combine, all right? Next, you're going to pour over your stock slowly. All right. You don't want to just dump it in. You just want to slowly pour that over. And then you can take your pan, if you had a paella pan, you choose hands or on your thing, shake it. All right. Shaking a pan is a way to distribute your ingredients. Stirring is not what we want to do. Shaking. It's going to shake that rice out, get it nice and even. All right. And then this is kind of say, let it go. All right, that's going to help disperse that liquid, make sure the rice is nice and even. And as we mentioned, we're not stirring because we do not want the starch released from the rice. okay? Unlike risotto, where we're stirring the whole time. Now, once you can see that liquid come up to a boil, all right, you reduce heat to low and allow the rice to cook for 15 minutes until almost tender. Again, I know you're thinking, no lid, no stirring. What? Just have a little bit of faith, all right? Now, you might need to, at this point, right? You're going to be checking your rice. You might need to add as this continues to cook down, right? Because now at this point, it's going to be almost tender. You're going to decorate the top of your paella with your artichoke hearts, your peas, your asparagus, and since all of those topping products are already cooked, you're just cooking those until those are warmed through and a little bit more bright green are showing, okay? Now, if your rice is not fully cooked, this is where you're, again, you're going to take a little bit of that stock or remaining stock or just some water and about half a cup and gently, distribute that. You can take a spoon and kind of shake it over just to give a little steaming action and finish the cooking process. Again, we don't want to start stirring. Let it rest, okay? Now, if you're a super paella professional, this is where you develop and work on focusing on socarat. I'm going to show you a photo of it once we get off of this, but that's where you develop this crispy crunch, right? Because again, remember I said paella is traditionally going to be cooked over the fire in an open pan, large saute pan. The bottom gets nice and crispy while the top has the rice perfectly cooked, and you get this, again, being a socarat master can take years. Definitely do not feel frustrated if you don't execute it. If you don't want to try it, give it a go. You might see, hey, I got a little bit of that crispy patch. That's great. Okay. You're not expected to ace it. The first time I attempted for a socarat, I think I burned it. All right. It happens. Okay. So you do want to make sure that you're not cranking that heat up to try to evaporate the stock. Low and slow and gentle and have faith. And if by chance you develop a socarat, great. If not, that is okay. What most important is understanding the technique and making sure that that rice is fully cooked. All right. Now, as I mentioned, you can add a little bit more. And once all that liquid's been absorbed, again, that's where that socarat comes. And of course, that is the real kind of true mark of a paella chef is their socarat. There are competitions that are based just on socarat development, which is pretty impressive. All right. Then garnish with your green onions and serve it up. Now, oh my goodness. That's right, Antonio. I forgot you've got the massive garden as well as your own asparagus. Use it and enjoy it. All right. That's going to be absolutely delicious. I do want to show you, I've got a visual of the socarat already pulled up. And this will give you an indicator. There are a few dishes around the world that kind of aim for socarat, which I think is pretty cool. It's not called the same thing, but it's a dish called tadig, and it is of Persian origins or Iranian origins. And the idea there is to get a crispy crunch on the bottom of rice too. If you've never had crispy rice, oof, 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 it is delicious and it is a master once you've gotten it. So check this out. Oh yeah. I mean, this is, and you can see, I'll put this in the instructor announcement section, but we're not talking about 10 layers of cooking rice. This is a very thin layer of rice, and this is maybe, 2 layers, and this is why sokarat develops, okay? Because it's crispy crunchy, all right? Now, I'll send this out to you, but this is what we're looking for. Do you see that? This is obviously, as I said, a pure master. I mean, I have never mastered something like that. That you can see the texture, the color, the crunch. It is, but it also has flexibility. It is wild. Here's another one, right? Let me see if I can get into this. Oh, I think this page never lets me see it. I don't have a subscription. Here's another one. Look at these holes. Remember, we think about the indicator of cooking your rice and you see those holes in the rice. Well, that's part of it. You can see this presentation. That actually even has a little aioli on there, but there it is. That's that socarat on the bottom, right? We can see that crunchy. Now, it is not burnt. That is not black and charred, but it is deep golden, gorgeous brown. That is just full of richness, nuttiness, flavor, and a bit of crunch. And it really has this beautiful flavor and a wonderful aroma. All right. Now, just to point this out to show you what a paella pan looks like, because I did want to show that to you. No, that's not what I want. But you can see that the presentation here is really what this is all about, right? Paella pans, paella cooking above a fire. You'll often see a whole paella setup that looks like this, which is just on a burner. But the paella pan itself has, this is what I want to show you, has this little texture. See these little holes? Well, guess what? That also helps with the sakarat. Um, you know, I got one of these super cheap ones at TJ Maxx for like $10. It's really thin. That's also why you can develop that crispy crunch because but if the fire is too hot, oof, burn city. All right. But those little holes have an impact on that cooking process. But certainly not required. As I mentioned, this one is an enameled pan, which can have ease, but you can see the presentation is key. So definitely think about focusing on their asparagus, how you're plating everything out with your artichoke hearts and your peas. And there we see, look at the size of that, right? There's like one of the largest paella pans, which I think, it's like, I'll try to figure that out, find that article and send it to you as well. But very interesting. All right. And this would be your full paella setup, right? The pan with the burner, you put your propane tank below, and you're basically cooking it up and setting it up. It is a kitchen on the run. Maybe you're hunting, maybe you're fishing, maybe you're foraging. What did you find? You've got a bag of rice and whatever the herbs you came in or whatever you hunted, and voila, you make up a little paella. All righty. Um, uh, no way. Antonia just put in the chat that there's a farmer's market every Saturday and at least 3 vendors that serve paella, the seafood version. Seafood version, very classic, very traditional. But you're going to make a fantastic vegan version. If you think about, I remember the first time I made paella was a vegetarian version as well. And I served mine with some crispy fried leeks. If you happen to have some leeks or extra scallions, you already have that oil cooking up for your patatas bravas. Do yourself a favor, do some nice julienne, nice cut, thin, super thin knife cuts on your leeks. Fry those, pull them out, season with a little bit of salt and smoked paprika, and put that on top of your paella. You will not be disappointed. All righty. Class, if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Keep pushing. Thanks again for being here. Let me know how I can be of assistance to you. Let's keep pushing. Let's finish strong. We're into week 3, halfway point. We're all in this together. I'm always got your back. So let's do this and take care. Be well. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And talk to you then. Bye-bye.